Hey everyone, it's Flakfire. Battlefield 1's first downloadable content pack, They Shall Not Pass, is just around the corner. The DLC is based on the cornerstone of Entente forces on the Western Front, of course being the French Army. We know two of the maps featured in They Shall Not Pass are focused on the Battle of Verdun. With the 101st anniversary of the battle coming up on February 21st, I figured it would be interesting to examine the new maps and their relation to World War I history. The Verdun Heights map, for example, is set during the early stages of the Battle of Verdun in 1916. Verdun was a city surrounded by several forts, including the infamous Fort Douaumont and Fort Vaux. In the months leading up to the German attack, French High Command stripped the forts of most of their heavy weapons and manpower for other areas on the Western Front, believing an attack on the city was unlikely. Nevertheless, German forces began a well-prepared assault on February 21st, pounding French defensive positions for over 9 straight hours. Some French soldiers were allegedly buried alive. Trench lines were completely wiped from the face of the earth, and communication networks were shredded. This barrage set alight forests and fields surrounding Verdun, which are featured in the upcoming Verdun Heights map. These fires give the map a unique but sinister personality. Some French aerial observers who witnessed this bombardment described it as a volcano, while those on the ground knew it as the Devil's Anvil. The real-world location of the Verdun Heights map in Battlefield 1 does remain a bit of a mystery. Based on concept art and other information from DICE, it's likely that the map is set in the heights near Samogneux, north of Verdun. The area suffered terribly during the battle, and the nearby commune of Haumont-près-Samogneux was completely destroyed during the fighting, never to be rebuilt. It is officially listed as a village that died for France. Despite no longer being able to recognize their own country and outnumbered 5-1 in some cases, French forces fought valiantly to buy precious time while High Command attempted to reorganize and form an effective defense. 1,200 of these soldiers under the command of Colonel Émile Drian held on to the nearby Bois de Cour for 2 days. The Bois de Cour stretched just over a square kilometer, yet it was saturated by an estimated 80,000 German artillery shells during the initial barrage on the 21st. Already deaf and concussed by artillery, Drian's men now faced attacks by German flamethrowers. They fought until they ran out of ammunition and then resorted to bayonets. The battalions were decimated, with losses at 90%. Drian was himself killed after finally issuing the order to withdraw to Samogneux and other nearby positions. He is regarded as a national hero in France, playing a pivotal role in preventing a catastrophic breakthrough at Verdun. Based on what we've seen of the Verdun Heights map, DICE fully understands the desperate nature of the fighting that took place in the woods outside the city. However, the battle for the Heights was not the only example of a tooth-and-nail defense during the German effort to take Verdun. Fort Vaux is synonymous with French stubbornness and resolve in World War I. I've talked about it in previous videos, but it's a story that never gets old. By late May, German forces had reached the outskirts of Fort Vaux and began their assault in force. The fighting was severe for both sides. On June 2, 1916, German assaults with flamethrowers pushed the French defenders inside the fort itself. By June 5th, the situation was such that the fort's commander, Major Sylvain Eugene Raynal, requested the fort be bombed as its surface defenses had been completely overrun by the Germans. By June 7th, the fighting had moved underground and was hand-to-hand among the galleries like those shown in Battlefield 1's promotional images. Medical, food, and water supplies were all exhausted, forcing French defenders to lick condensation from the fort's walls or even drink their own urine. Outside, French relief forces desperately trying to push back the German attackers received one final message from Fort Vaux. It begged, "Don't leave us." Unfortunately, with most of his men dead or wounded, Major Raynal finally requested the surrender of his garrison to the German attackers later that day. The request was granted, and the garrison surrendered formally with their bodies broken, but their dignity intact. Because of their tenacity, Raynal and his defenders were treated with respect. German soldiers described the French defense of Fort Vaux as, quote, utterly reckless of their own lives and defended to the very last gasp, end quote. Although the French forces couldn't relieve Raynal and his men in time, Fort Vaux would be recaptured later that November. Verdun was a terrible battle. By the time it ended on December 18, 1916, almost 1 million soldiers were casualties of the fighting. Estimates place French casualties at around 540,000, with 162,000 soldiers killed. Germany didn't fare much better, suffering around 430,000 casualties, with 143,000 soldiers killed in action. As with many World War I battles, these soldiers fought and died over mere kilometers. Dice's decision to include the battles of the Verdun Heights and Fort Vaux was a wise one. The Battle of Verdun holds a very special place in the cultural memory of France. Personally, I'm very excited to experience these new maps, and if I had to pick battles from World War I, including the French Army, to feature in Battlefield 1, these two would be first on the list. Of course, Verdun Heights and Fort Vaux are only two of the new maps coming in They Shall Not Pass. The other two maps are set during 1918 and showcase the beginning of the end of hostilities on the Western Front. I'll talk about them in the Battle of Soissons in a future video, but with the anniversary of the Battle of Verdun fast approaching, it seemed appropriate to provide some more background information for Battlefield 1 players on the new maps. They Shall Not Pass is due out in March and is included with a premium subscription to Battlefield 1. What are your thoughts on the French DLC and the map settings for Verdun Heights and Fort Vaux? Tell me in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like and consider sharing on social media. If you want to take your Battlefield 1 game to the next level, check out the Battlefield 1 Ultimate Utility app with a link in the video description. As always, thanks for watching.